The military is running out of people. Across the country, recruiting centers are missing their targets by the thousands, leaving the armed forces struggling to fill their ranks. If you tune into the typical cable news panel, the explanation for this empty pipeline sounds pretty uniform. Pundits argue that Generation Z is simply too distracted by screens, too soft for military discipline, or entirely lacking in patriotism. But online forums and digital communities tell a completely different story. Young adults are actively looking at the military. They are reading the fine print, asking questions, and generating thousands of comments about the realities of service. And after doing their homework, they are making a conscious choice to walk away. The real surprise here is who they are listening to. The loudest voices telling young people to avoid enlisting aren't civilian critics. They are recent veterans. People who spent years in uniform have shifted from being the military's most reliable recruiters to active whistleblowers, directly warning the next generation to stay out. Institutional trust is eroding from the inside out, driven by the very ambassadors the military once relied on to sell the lifestyle. To understand why trust evaporated, we have to look at the conflicts these veterans just left. Over the last 2 decades, service members were repeatedly deployed into environments where clear national defense objectives blurred into chaotic, shifting geopolitical maneuvers, leaving troops to manage the collapsing realities on the ground. This disconnect breeds a specific psychological toll that clinicians call moral injury. It happens when a soldier is forced to participate in or witness events that violate their deeply held ethical beliefs. It is an internal rupture, a lingering guilt and distrust going far beyond a standard stress response. Rank-and-file troops carry this heavy moral burden home with them. Meanwhile, they watch top-tier military leadership face zero consequences for the strategic failures that created the mess in the first place. Generals oversee botched withdrawals and captured airfields, yet the hierarchy shields them from any real accountability. It is a delayed reaction. Only now, years after the fact, is the Department of Defense announcing comprehensive accountability reviews for events like the 2021 withdrawal from Afghanistan, attempting to figure out what went wrong long after the damage was done. Troops return to civilian life carrying a heavy moral weight, one made worse by the realization that their commanders never had to account for the strategic failures that caused it. That feeling of betrayal follows them right back to the home front. When veterans try to access the healthcare, housing, and benefits they were promised at enlistment, they frequently encounter what the VA recognizes as institutional betrayal, the specific harm caused when a powerful organization abandons the people who depend on it. Consider the legacy of burn pits. For years, the military disposed of waste by burning it in massive open-air pits, exposing troops to toxic smoke. When those soldiers got sick, they had to fight their own government for years just to get their conditions acknowledged and treated. This systemic neglect eventually spilled over into public protests. Veterans realize that the polished hero narrative sold in recruitment commercials often ends in bureaucratic abandonment, and they are making sure the public knows exactly what that looks like. This chart outlines one of the bureaucratic loopholes designed to save the government money. Reservists need 180 continuous days of active duty to qualify for the Transition Assistance Program. To avoid providing those benefits, the military routinely caps their active duty orders, meaning their service stops dead at 179 days, just 1 day short of getting the help they earned. This policy has consequences that reach far past the individual reservist. Research from MSVU shows that children in military families internalize this sense of abandonment, which effectively poisons the well for the next generation of potential recruits. This systematic neglect turns historically loyal military families into the most effective anti-recruitment force in America. When the government breaks promises to the parent, the family warns the child to stay away. The recruitment shortage is a symptom of a highly informed generation paying attention to these warnings. Armed with real-time data and direct access to veteran stories, Gen Z is organizing a sophisticated consumer strike against an employer with a terrible track record. Without a reliable influx of willing recruits, the foundation of the American all-volunteer force is fracturing, raising serious questions about the military's ability to respond to international crises. The personnel shortages are so severe that defense scholars and policy think tanks are now openly debating extreme measures. Planners are analyzing models of peacetime conscription and mandatory national service just to maintain basic NATO readiness levels. You cannot patch a collapsed foundation with sign-on bonuses or glossy ad campaigns. The Department of Defense is trying to market its way out of a problem that requires structural reform. To rebuild the all-volunteer force, the military must demonstrate genuine institutional courage. That means taking responsibility for its failures, delivering on its promises, and repairing the broken covenant with the men and women who already served. Because you cannot recruit the future while you are actively abandoning the past.